Have you ever seen someone destroy their entire career in under 5 minutes just because of their own prejudice? It's a level of karma that feels almost too good to be true. Picture this. A first-class cabin, a young black girl minding her own business, and a flight attendant who decided that this passenger didn't look the part. The attendant called the police. She screamed. She humiliated a teenager in front of a full flight. But what she didn't know was that the girl wasn't just a passenger. She was the daughter of the man who signed the flight attendant's paychecks. This is the story of Jessica Miller's worst and last day at work. The air inside the jet bridge at JFK International Airport was thick with the smell of jet fuel and the humidity of a rainy New York Tuesday. For most people, boarding a flight to London was a routine mix of stress and anticipation. But for Jessica Miller, senior flight attendant for Meridian Airways today, was just another headache in a skirt suit. Jessica adjusted her silk scarf, checking her reflection in the glass of the boarding door. She was 34, impeccably groomed, and possessed a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, a smile she reserved for high-value customers. She prided herself on maintaining the sanctity of the first-class cabin. In her mind, the front of the plane was a country club, and she was the gatekeeper. Boarding groups 1 and 2, please have your passes ready. The gate agent's voice crackled over the PA system. Jessica stood at the entrance of the aircraft, greeting the elite passengers. A banker in a charcoal suit nodded at her. A famous Broadway actress gave a tired wave. Jessica beamed at them. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Henderson. Lovely to see you again, Ms. Albright." Then the flow of suits and designer handbags was interrupted. Walking down the jet bridge was a girl who looked no older than 19. She was wearing an oversized grey hoodie that swallowed her frame, black leggings and battered Converse sneakers. Her hair was pulled back in messy box braids, and huge noise-cancelling headphones rested around her neck. She held a boarding pass loosely in one hand and was scrolling through her phone with the other. Jessica's smile instantly evaporated. Her eyes narrowed, scanning the girl Diana Reynolds from head to toe. To Jessica, Diana looked like she belonged in the back row of a Greyhound bus, not stepping onto the plush carpet of a Meridian 787 Dreamliner. As Diana stepped onto the plane, she offered a small, polite nod. "Hi, good morning." Jessica didn't move out of the doorway. She planted her heels firmly, blocking the path to the left, the path to first class. "Economy is to your right, honey," Jessica said, her voice dripping with a sickly sweet condescension. She pointed a manicured finger toward the long aisle leading to the back of the plane. "Row 30 and back. You're holding up the line." Diana paused, looking confused. She pulled her headphones down fully. "Oh, sorry, I think I'm in seat 1A. Jessica let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. It was loud enough that Mr. Henderson, the banker, already settled in. Seat 2A, looked up over his Wall Street Journal. 1A, Jessica repeated loud enough for the boarding passengers behind Diana to hear. "Sweetheart, 1A is a first-class suite. It costs $12,000 for this leg. Now please stop playing games and head to your assigned seat in the back. We have a schedule to keep." Diana frowned, her demeanor shifting from casual to slightly annoyed. She held up her phone, which displayed the digital boarding pass. "I'm not playing games. My name is Diana Reynolds. Seat 1A. Look." She tried to show the screen to Jessica. Jessica didn't even look at the screen. She swatted the air, brushing Diana's hand away, as if the phone were contaminated. "I don't need to look at a Photoshop job, miss. I've been flying for 10 years. I know who belongs in this cabin and who doesn't. We have a strict dress code and conduct policy in first class." "There is no dress code for paying passengers," Diana said, her voice steady but tightening. "And I'm not moving. You're blocking my seat." The line behind them was growing. A man in a blue polo shirt behind Diana sighed loudly. "Come on, let's go." Some of us have connections to make. Jessica used the passenger's irritation as fuel. She stepped closer to Diana, invading her personal space. "You hear that? You are disturbing the peace. This is your last warning. Go to economy. Find an empty seat if you have a ticket, which I doubt, or I will have you escorted off this plane." Diana took a deep breath. She was young, but she held herself with a composure that contradicted her casual clothes. "I'm asking you one last time to scan my pass. If you scan it, it will beep green, and we can both move on." "I am not scanning a fake pass." Jessica snapped her professional mask, slipping completely. "You people always think you can scam your way into luxury. Not on my flight. Not today." The phrase "you people" hung heavy in the recycled air. The cabin went silent. Mr. Henderson lowered his newspaper completely. A woman in row 3 whispered to her husband. Diana's eyes hardened. "Okay," Diana said quietly. "You don't want to scan it?" "Fine." Diana sidestepped Jessica with a quick, fluid motion and walked straight into the first-class cabin, dropping her backpack onto the leather seat of 1A. Jessica gasped. It was a sound of pure outrage. She spun around, her face flushing a deep, blotchy red. "Excuse me. You cannot just get up. Get up right now." Jessica stormed over to seat 1A, grabbing the strap of Diana's backpack. "I'm calling the captain." "No, I'm calling the police. You are trespassing on a federal aircraft." Diana sat down, buckled her seatbelt, and looked Jessica dead in the eye. "Call them." The tension in the first-class cabin was so tight, it felt like a pressurized canister waiting to explode. The ambient boarding music, a soft jazz instrumental, seemed mockingly calm against the chaos unfolding in row 1. Jessica Miller was trembling, not with fear, but with the adrenaline of a power trip gone wrong. She marched to the flight deck interphone, snatching the receiver off the wall. She glared at Diana Reynolds, who had calmly taken out a tablet and was tapping away at the screen, seemingly unbothered by the woman threatening her freedom. "Captain," Jessica hissed into the phone, though she was speaking loud enough for the passengers to hear. "We have a security breach in first class. An unruly passenger. She refused instructions, physically pushed past me, and is squatting into seat 1A. She's aggressive. I need law enforcement immediately." She hung up and turned back to the cabin, smoothing her skirt. "The police are on their way," she announced to the room, casting a sympathetic look at the other wealthy passengers. "I apologize for this riff-raff. We will have her removed shortly, so we can enjoy our flight to London." Mr. Henderson, the banker in 2A, cleared his throat. "Excuse me, miss." Jessica turned to him, expecting support. "Yes, sir. Can I get you a pre-departure champagne while we wait?" "I just wanted to say," Henderson said, looking uncomfortable. "I didn't see her push you. She just walked around you." Jessica's smile twitched. "Sir, with all due respect, aggressive posturing is a form of violence. She is a threat to flight safety." 2 rows back, a younger woman started recording with her iPhone, hiding it partially behind her purse. 10 minutes passed. The boarding had completely stopped. The economy passengers were backed up into the terminal, groaning about the delay. Finally, heavy boots thudded down the jet bridge. 2 Port Authority officers squeezed onto the plane. One was a burly older man named Officer Kowalski. The other a younger, sharper-looking woman named Officer Diaz. Jessica rushed to them immediately, playing the victim with practiced ease. "Oh, thank God you're here. She's right there." She pointed an accusing finger at Diana, who was still seated looking at a spreadsheet on her iPad. "She assaulted me," Jessica lied effortlessly. "She stormed the cabin, refused to show a ticket, and threw her bag at me. I don't feel safe flying with her." Officer Kowalski frowned, looking at the young girl in the hoodie. He walked over to seat 1A, his hand resting near his belt. "Miss, I need you to stand up and grab your belongings." Diana looked up, removing her headphones again. She didn't look scared. She looked bored. "Did she tell you I have a ticket? The flight attendant says you refused to show documentation and forced your way on," Officer Diaz said, stepping closer. "If you don't have a ticket for this seat, this is theft of services and trespassing. If you touched her, that's assault." "I didn't touch her," Diana said calmly. "And I have a ticket. She refused to scan it because she didn't like my hoodie." Diana held out her phone again, the QR code for seat 1A, bright on the screen. Officer Diaz looked at the phone, then at Jessica. "Ma'am, she has a pass right here." Jessica waved her hand dismissively. "It's fake." "Look at her. Does she look like she dropped 12 grand on a ticket? She's probably using a stolen credit card or a hacked app. I want her off my plane. Captain's orders." Technically, the captain hadn't come out of the cockpit, trusting his head attendant to handle the unruly passenger. But Jessica knew that once she invoked the safety card, the police had to act. Miss Officer Kowalski said, his voice dropping an octave. "We can sort out the ticket validity at the station. But right now, the crew wants you off. You have to deplane. Don't make us drag you." Diana sighed. She locked her iPad and stood up slowly. "Okay, I'll get off, but I need to make one phone call before I step off this jet bridge." "You can call your lawyer from the holding cell." Jessica scoffed, crossing her arms triumphantly. "Actually," Diana said, her eyes locking onto Jessica's name tag, "I'm calling my dad." Jessica laughed out loud. It was a cruel, cackling sound. "Oh, honey, who's your daddy? Is he going to come beat me up? Is he the janitor at the terminal? Does he drive the baggage cart?" Diana didn't answer. She pressed a speed dial contact on her phone. She put it to her ear. The cabin was silent enough that everyone could hear the ringing tone. "Hey, Dad," Diana said. "Yeah, I'm at JFK. I'm on the plane. No, we haven't taken off. The senior flight attendant, Jessica Miller, is having me arrested. Yeah. She says I stole the ticket. No, she wouldn't scan it. She said I look like riffraff and that I'm dangerous. Yeah, the police are here. Okay. You're where? Okay. I'll wait." Diana hung up and sat back down. "I thought I told you to get up," Jessica shouted, losing her patience. "Officers arrest her." "My father is 2 gates away," Diana said, her voice dropping to a chilly calm. "He was in the Concorde lounge. He said to wait 2 minutes. "I don't care if your father is the Pope," Jessica yelled, her face contorting. "Get off this plane." "Wait," Officer Diaz said, holding up a hand. She was looking at the manifest on the wall tablet that Jessica had ignored. "Wait a second." Officer Diaz tapped the screen. "Reynolds?" "Diana Reynolds." She looked at the ticketing code. "Status VVIP, partner family." Diaz looked at Jessica with wide eyes. "Ma'am, do you know who this is?" "I don't care," Jessica shrieked. "She is disrupting my flight." Suddenly, the movement at the front of the plane stopped. The commotion in the jet bridge went silent. The heavy footsteps of a man running, not walking, but running, echoed down the tunnel. A man burst onto the plane. He was tall, wearing a bespoke navy suit that cost more than Jessica's car. He was out of breath, his face thunderous with rage. Behind him trailed 2 breathless personal assistants and the Meridian Airways station manager for JFK, a man named Robert Sterling, who looked like he was about to have a heart attack. The man in the navy suit didn't look at the police. He didn't look at the passengers. He looked straight at Jessica. "Dad?" Diana said quietly. David Reynolds, CEO of Reynolds Global Logistics, the company that handled 60% of Meridian Airways' cargo contracts and held a 15% stake in the airline itself, stepped into the first-class cabin. Jessica's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She recognized him. Everyone recognized him. He had been on the cover of Forbes last month. David walked past the police officers as if they were ghosts. He stood in front of Jessica Miller, his presence filling the cabin. "Are you the one?" David asked. His voice wasn't loud. It was terrifyingly quiet. "Are you the one calling my daughter a thief?" Jessica swallowed hard, her throat clicking dryly. Mr. Reynolds, I didn't know." "You didn't know," David repeated. He turned to the terrified station manager, Robert Sterling. "Robert, is this how Meridian treats my family? Is this how you treat paying customers based on how they dress?" "Mr. Reynolds, please," Robert stammered, wiping sweat from his forehead. "There has been a terrible misunderstanding. Jessica, what have you done?" "She called the police on me, Dad," Diana said from her seat, finally looking vulnerable. "She told everyone I was a criminal. She wouldn't even look at my ticket." David Reynolds turned back to Jessica. His eyes were like ice. "Get your bag," he said. Jessica blinked, tears of panic starting to well up. "Sir." "Get your bag," David enunciated slowly. "You are not working this flight. In fact, Robert, I want her badge. Right now." The silence in the cabin was deafening. The twist had landed, and the karma was about to be served cold. The first-class cabin of the Dreamliner was usually a place of quiet luxury, smelling of leather and expensive perfume. Now it smelled of fear, specifically Jessica Miller's fear. David Reynolds stood in the aisle, a titan in a navy suit, blocking out the overhead lights. He didn't scream. He didn't throw a tantrum. He simply waited, his hand extended, palm open. "Your badge, Miss Miller," David repeated. His voice was dangerously level, a low rumble that vibrated through the floorboards. Jessica looked around the cabin, desperate for an ally. She looked at Officer Kowalski, but the burly policeman had stepped back, hooking his thumbs into his belt. He knew better than to interfere in a corporate execution. She looked at the passengers. Mr. Henderson, the banker, was studiously examining his cuticles. The Broadway actress was watching with wide, unblinking eyes. Finally, Jessica looked at Robert Sterling, the station manager. He was her direct superior's boss. He was the man who approved her holiday bonuses. "Robert," she pleaded, her voice cracking into a high, thin whine. "You can't do this. I've been with Meridian for 10 years. I have a clean record. This is just a misunderstanding. The girl Diana, she wasn't cooperating. I was just doing my job." Robert Sterling wiped a bead of sweat from his upper lip. He looked at David Reynolds, then at the terrified flight attendant. He knew the math. Jessica was a senior attendant, sure. But David Reynolds, his logistics company, moved $200 million of cargo with Meridian every year. If Reynolds walked, Meridian's stock would plummet by morning. Robert stepped forward. His face was pale but determined. "Jessica," Robert said, his voice trembling slightly, "hand over your credentials. Now. You are relieved of duty, effective immediately." "But who will work the flight?" Jessica gasped, clutching the silver wings pinned to her lapel. "I'm the purser. You can't fly without me." "We have a reserve crew member on standby in the terminal," Robert said coldly. "She's already on her way down the bridge. Now, the badge." Jessica's hands shook violently as she reached for her chest. Her fingers, usually so nimble when pouring champagne or demonstrating safety vests, fumbled with the clasp of her name tag. It felt like it was welded to her uniform. Every second stretched into an hour. Click. The pin came loose. Jessica held the plastic ID and the silver wings in her trembling palm. She looked at them, the symbols of her authority, the identity she had built her life around. Without them, she was just a woman standing in a plane she couldn't afford to be on. She dropped them into Robert's hand. They made a pathetic clatter. "And your company tablet," David Reynolds added, not taking his eyes off her. Jessica unslung her red leather duty bag. She pulled out the iPad, the same device she had refused to use to check Diana's status. She handed it over. "Officers," David said, turning to the police, "this woman is no longer a crew member of Meridian Airways. Therefore, she has no ticket and no business on this aircraft. I'd like her removed for trespassing." The irony hit Jessica like a physical blow. The air left her lungs. Officer Diaz, the female officer whom Jessica had tried to manipulate earlier, stepped forward. There was no sympathy in her eyes. "Let's go, ma'am. Grab your personal bag. You're leaving." I have to get my coat from the closet," Jessica whispered. "We'll mail it to you," Robert snapped. "Go." Jessica turned to walk off the plane. The walk from row 1 to the boarding door was less than 10 feet, but it felt like miles. As she passed Diana Reynolds in seat 1A, Jessica paused. She couldn't help it. Diana didn't look triumphant. She didn't smirk. She looked exhausted. She looked like a teenager who just wanted to listen to her music and go to London. She looked up at Jessica, her brown eyes sad and heavy. "I just wanted to sit down," Diana said softly. Jessica opened her mouth to speak, to lash out, to beg. She didn't know which, but Officer Kowalski put a heavy hand on her shoulder. "Keep moving," he grunted. Jessica Miller stepped across the threshold, off the plush carpet of the airplane, and onto the industrial grey rubber of the jet bridge. The moment her heel hit the metal, the heavy aircraft door began to swing shut behind her. Thud! The locking mechanism clicked. She was outside, alone, fired. Inside the jet bridge, the humid air hit her. She stood there for a moment, staring at the closed door. Through the small porthole window, she could see the movement inside the passengers, settling in the new flight attendant, rushing on board. The world was moving on without her. And then she heard it. From the other side of the glass inside the terminal gate area, the waiting passengers for the next flight were staring at her. Some were pointing, and worse, phones were raised. She realized with a sick, sinking feeling in her gut, the girl in row 3. She was recording. The flight to London was 6 hours and 40 minutes. For Diana Reynolds, it passed in a blur of awkward overcompensation. The replacement purser, a nervous woman named Sarah, treated Diana like she was royalty made of glass. She brought extra warm nuts before Diana even asked. She offered 3 different types of blankets. The Captain Harrison, personally came out of the cockpit before takeoff to shake Diana's hand and apologize for the unfortunate incident. Diana hated it. She hated the attention almost as much as she hated the discrimination. She just put her noise-cancelling headphones back on, pulled her hoodie up, and stared out the window at the Atlantic Ocean, wishing she could disappear. Her father, David, sat in seat 1E across the aisle. He spent the first hour of the flight on the plane's Wi-Fi, typing furiously on his laptop. Diana knew that look. He wasn't just working. He was going to war. Meanwhile, on the ground in New York, Jessica Miller's life was dismantling itself at the speed of fiber optics. Jessica had been escorted out of the secure area by the police. They stripped her of her airport security pass at the exit. She had to take the public air train to the employee lot to get her car. She sat in her Honda Civic, her hands gripping the steering wheel, shaking uncontrollably. Ideally, she should have gone home, poured a glass of wine, and stayed off the internet. But human nature is self-destructive. She opened TikTok. She didn't even have to search. It was already trending under the hashtag #Meridian Airways. The video had been uploaded by a user named @TravelWithTess. It had been live for only 90 minutes. It already had 2.4 million views. Jessica pressed play. The video was shaky, filmed from 2 rows back, but the audio was crystal clear. "I am not scanning a fake pass. You people always think you can scam your way into luxury." Jessica watched herself on the tiny screen. She looked hideous. Her face was twisted in a sneer she didn't recognize. Her voice sounded shrill and hateful. Then the camera panned to the girl, Diana. Calm, quiet, just asking for her ticket to be scanned. Then the climax. The camera captured the moment David Reynolds stormed onto the plane. The caption on the video read, "Flight attendant bullies girl for wearing a hoodie, doesn't realize her dad owns the airline, # karma, # fired." Jessica scrolled to the comments. There were 40,000 of them. User 123. The way she said, "You people. Oh, she is done. Flygirl 99. I'm a flight attendant and we do not claim her. This is disgusting. Justice, Diana. Imagine losing a 80K a year job because you couldn't be polite to a teenager. Embarrassing. Dan, the man. I know this woman. She was rude to my mom on a flight to Miami last year. Her name is Jessica Miller. Jessica dropped her phone into the passenger seat as if it had burned her. She felt bile rising in her throat. They knew her name. She started the car and drove home, tears blurring her vision. She told herself she could fix this. She would call the union rep in the morning. She would say she was under stress. She would say the video was edited out of context. She would sue the girl for defamation. Yes, that's what she would do. She would sue. But the universe wasn't done with her yet. The next morning, Jessica didn't get to call the union. At 7:00 a.m., her phone rang. It was a New York number she didn't recognize. "This is Jessica," she croaked, her voice hoarse from crying all night. "Ms. Miller, this is Eleanor Vance, Vice President of Human Resources for Meridian Airways," a crisp, icy voice said. Jessica sat up in bed. "Eleanor. Hi. Look, I can explain. The passenger was aggressive and the video doesn't show." "Ms. Miller, stop." Eleanor cut her off. "You are required to appear at the headquarters in Long Island City at 10:00 a.m. sharp for a formal disciplinary hearing. Bring your uniform and any remaining company property." "A hearing? That's good," Jessica stammered, clinging to hope. "So we can talk about this. Do not be late," Eleanor said, and the line went dead. Jessica showered and dressed. She put on her best business suit, not her uniform. She did her hair perfectly. She practiced her speech in the mirror. "I was following safety protocols. I made a judgment call that turned out to be wrong, but my priority was the safety of the aircraft." She drove to the headquarters. The building was a glass monolith reflecting the grey sky. When she walked into the lobby, the security guard, a man she had waved to every morning for 5 years, didn't smile. He looked down at his desk. "They're waiting for you in conference room B, Jessica." She walked down the long hallway. The walls were lined with posters of smiling flight attendants and happy passengers. The slogan, "Meridian Rising Above," seemed to mock her. She opened the door to conference room B. She expected Eleanor Vance. She expected a union rep. Instead, she walked into a tribunal. Eleanor Vance was there at the head of the table. To her right was the director of in-flight services. To her left was a man Jessica had only seen on TV, the general counsel for Meridian Airways. And in the corner, sitting in a leather chair, looking out the window at the skyline, was David Reynolds. Jessica froze in the doorway. "Mr. Reynolds, I didn't know you would be here." David turned slowly. He looked fresh, rested. He had flown to London, done his business, and flown back on the red-eye just to be here. "I wouldn't miss this, Jessica," David said softly. "Please, sit down." Jessica sat. The leather chair felt cold. Eleanor Vance slid a single piece of paper across the mahogany table. "Ms. Miller." Eleanor began, her voice devoid of emotion. "We have reviewed the incident report from Flight 880. We have reviewed the statements from the airport police, the station manager, and 7 witness statements from passengers in the first-class cabin. And of course, we have reviewed the video footage, which currently has 12 million views." "It was taken out of context," Jessica blurted out. "The girl, Diana, she was wearing a hoodie. She looked suspicious. I was just trying to protect the first-class cabin." "Suspicious?" David Reynolds spoke up. He leaned forward. "What is suspicious about a hoodie?" "Jessica, is it the fabric or is it the person wearing it?" Jessica stammered. I just meant she didn't fit the profile." "The profile," David repeated, tasting the word like poison. "You profiled my daughter. You assumed that because she is black and young, she could not possibly afford a seat on your plane. You didn't check her ticket. You didn't ask her name. You threatened her with arrest." "I was stressed," Jessica cried. "We've been short-staffed." "This isn't about stress," the general counsel interjected smoothly. He tapped the paper on the table. "This is a termination notice, effective immediately, for gross misconduct, discriminatory behavior, and violation of the Meridian Airways Code of Ethics." "You can't just fire me." Jessica stood up, her face flushing red. "I have rights. The union has already reviewed the footage," Eleanor Vance said quietly. "They are not contesting the termination. They have withdrawn their support." Jessica felt the room spinning. No union. That was impossible. The union defended everyone, even the drunks. Furthermore, the general counsel continued, "Meridian Airways is stripping you of your flight benefits. You are permanently banned from flying with Meridian or any of our partner airlines. And given the severity of the public relations disaster you have caused, we are issuing a press release within the hour, stating that you have been terminated to uphold our company values." "A press release?" Jessica whispered. "You're going to name me?" "The internet already named you, Jessica," David said. He stood up and buttoned his jacket. "We are just confirming it. You wanted to be the gatekeeper. You wanted to decide who gets to fly and who doesn't. Well, now you don't get to fly at all." David walked towards the door. He stopped as he passed her chair. "My daughter cried for 3 hours in the lounge in London because of you," David said, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. "She thought she had done something wrong. She thought she didn't belong. You made her feel small. So now I'm making sure the world knows exactly how small you are." He walked out. Eleanor Vance pointed to the paper. Sign it, Jessica, and then get out. Jessica looked at the paper. Termination for cause. She signed it. Her signature was a jagged scrawl. She walked out of the headquarters into the bright, blinding sunlight of Queens. She took her phone out of her pocket. She had hundreds of notifications. She opened LinkedIn. She was going to try to delete her profile, but she saw a notification at the top. It was a new post from the official Meridian Airways page. Meridian Airways has zero tolerance for discrimination. We can confirm that the employee involved in the incident on Flight 880 has been terminated effective immediately. We stand with the Reynolds family and all our passengers. Under the post, there were comments cheering. Jessica Miller realized then that the karma wasn't just hitting her, it was burying her. But she still had one card left to play, or so she thought. She wiped her eyes. If she couldn't work, she would sue. She would turn herself into the victim. She would go on talk shows. She would spin this. She dialed the number of a high-profile injury lawyer she had seen on billboards. "Hello," she said into the phone, trying to sound confident. "I've been wrongfully terminated. I want to sue a billionaire." On the other end of the line, the receptionist paused. Is this the flight attendant from the video?" "Yes," Jessica said. "One moment." The line clicked. Then a dial tone. They had hung up on her. Jessica stood on the sidewalk, the busy city rushing past her, realizing that for the first time in her life, she was completely and utterly grounded. 3 weeks had passed since the incident on the Dreamliner. For most of the world, the news cycle had moved on. But for Jessica Miller, time had stopped. Her apartment in Queens, once a sanctuary of scented candles and order, was now a bunker. The blinds were drawn tight. Takeout boxes piled up on the counter. She hadn't left the building in days, terrified that a neighbor would recognize her as the Airport Karen, a moniker the internet had affectionately bestowed upon her. Her bank account was bleeding, without her salary and with her severance package denied due to gross misconduct. The walls were closing in. But Jessica wasn't grieving. She was seething. She paced her living room, clutching her phone. She had convinced herself of a new narrative. She was the victim. She was the martyr of a corporate machine that cared more about woke politics and a billionaire's feelings than the safety of its crew. "They threw me to the wolves," she muttered to the empty room. "I need to tell my story." She found her outlet not in a courtroom, but on a live stream. She had been contacted by Barry Stone, a controversial shock jock podcaster known for hosting cancelled individuals. He promised her a platform to clear her name and expose the elite. Against the advice of her mother, the only person still talking to her, Jessica agreed to the interview. The studio was in a basement in New Jersey. It smelled of stale coffee and ego. Barry Stone, a man with a red face and a loud tie, leaned into his microphone. "We're live," Stone grunted. "Today we have Jessica Miller, the flight attendant who lost everything because she dared to ask for a ticket. Jessica, tell us what really happened in that cabin." Jessica leaned into the mic. She had rehearsed this. She put on her best, sympathetic flight attendant voice. "Barry, it was terrifying." She lied, her voice quavering slightly. "This passenger, she was erratic. She was aggressive. You have to understand, we are trained to spot threats. She refused to make eye contact. She was hiding her face. When I asked for her pass, she lunged at me. The video was edited. They cut out the part where she threatened me." "And the father," Stone prodded. "The billionaire, he bought my silence," Jessica said, gaining confidence. He used his money to bully the airline. I'm a single woman working hard, and this billionaire comes in and snaps his fingers and I'm on the street. It's class warfare, Barry. For a moment, she felt triumphant. The live comments on the side of the screen were scrolling fast. Some were supportive. Stand your ground, Jessica corporate tyranny. But then the tide turned. Barry Stone looked at his producer, who was waving frantically from the control booth. Jessica, we have a caller on the line. They say they were on the flight." Jessica froze. "A caller? Put 'em through," Stone said, sensing drama. A voice crackled over the speakers. It was crisp, articulate, and undeniably British. "Hello," the voice said. "My name is Julian Thorne. I am a theatre director in London. I was sitting in seat 2D directly across from the incident." Jessica's stomach dropped. She remembered him. The man who had requested the vegan meal option before boarding. "Go ahead, Julian," Stone said. "I am listening to this woman speak." Julian said, his voice dripping with disdain. "And I have never heard such absolute rubbish in my life. That young girl Diana was barely audible. She was polite, she was small. The only person screaming, the only person acting like a lunatic, was you, Jessica." "That's not true," Jessica shouted, breaking character. "You're lying. You're probably paid by Reynolds." "And," Julian continued, ignoring her, "I have sent a video to your producer, Barry. It's from my own phone. It shows the 5 minutes before the viral clip. It shows Jessica Miller pushing the girl's shoulder, physically pushing her." Barry Stone's eyes went wide. He looked at his screen. The producer had loaded the clip. There it was, high definition. Jessica's face twisted in anger, shoving Diana Reynolds back toward the jet bridge wall. "Economy is that way, honey." The push was undeniable. It was assault. "Well," Barry Stone said, an awkward silence filling the room. "That looks pretty clear, Jessica." It was a safety maneuver," Jessica stammered, sweat beading on her forehead. "It looks like assault," Stone said, leaning back, distancing himself from his guest. "And we have about 10,000 comments calling you a liar. I think we're going to take a break." The feed cut. Jessica sat in the silence of the basement studio. She realized with a cold horror that she hadn't cleared her name. She had just dug her grave deeper. She had gone from incompetent to malicious in the eyes of the world. She walked out of the studio into the rainy New Jersey night. Her phone buzzed. It was her landlord. "Jessica." "I saw the video. The new one. I don't want trouble at my building. We need to talk about your lease renewal, or lack thereof." Denial is a powerful drug, and Jessica Miller was an addict. Despite the disastrous interview, despite the eviction notice, she found a lawyer. Samuel Hines was a strip mall attorney who usually handled slip-and-fall cases, but he smelled a settlement. He convinced Jessica that Meridian Airways would pay her to go away just to stop the bad press. They filed a wrongful termination suit claiming emotional distress and defamation. They demanded $5 million. Meridian Airways didn't offer a settlement. They offered a court date. 6 months later, Jessica sat in a glass-walled conference room in Manhattan. It was the law offices of Graves and Sterling, the most expensive corporate defense firm in the city. Across the table sat Jonathan Graves, a man who looked like he was carved out of granite. He was David Reynolds' personal attorney, and he had taken over the defense for the airline. There was no judge here yet. This was a deposition, a pre-trial questioning under oath. Jessica sat next to her lawyer, Samuel Hines, who looked cheap and nervous in his ill-fitting suit. "Ms. Miller," Jonathan Graves began. He didn't even look up from his file. You are claiming that your termination was unjust and that you were not discriminatory. Is that correct? Yes, Jessica said, chin up. I was following protocol. Protocol, Graves repeated. He placed a single sheet of paper on the table and swore, Miss Miller, are you aware that we have subpoenaed your employee personnel file? I have a clean record, Jessica scoffed. Ask anyone. A clean public record, Graves corrected. But internal complaints are a different matter. Tell me, do you remember a passenger named Elijah Vance from a flight to Atlanta in 2019? Jessica blinked. The name sounded vaguely familiar. Mr. Vance filed a complaint, stating that you refused to hang up his suit jacket in the first-class closet, claiming it was full, despite him seeing you hang up a white passenger's coat 2 minutes later. Do you recall this? The closet was full, Jessica snapped. I can't remember every coat. Do you remember Dr. Sarah Okonjo, a neurosurgeon flying to Zurich in 2021? Graves continued flipping a page. She complained that when she responded to a call for a doctor on board, you told her to sit down and ask to see her medical license, but you didn't ask the white male paramedic who stood up 3 rows back. Jessica's mouth went dry. I was verifying credentials. That is standard safety. It seems your safety standards only apply to people of a certain complexion. Graves said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly low volume. He opened a laptop on the table. But this is the one that interests me the most. He turned the screen toward her. It wasn't a video. It was a chat log. This is a screenshot from a private WhatsApp group chat between you and several other flight attendants. It is dated the morning of the incident with Ms. Reynolds. Jessica felt the blood drain from her face. She had deleted those chats. How did they have them? One of your former colleagues trying to save her own job provided us with the logs, Graves explained, answering her unasked question. He read from the screen. You wrote, Ugh, working the London leg today. Praying I don't get any ghetto upgrades in first class. I hate having to play waiter to people who don't belong. The room went silent. The word or hung in the air, ugly and undeniable. Samuel Hines, Jessica's lawyer, closed his folder. He physically moved his chair an inch away from her. Ms. Miller, Graves said, closing the laptop. This text message proves premeditated bias. It destroys your defense. It destroys your character. And if we go to court, I will project this message onto a 10-foot screen for a jury to see. Jessica began to cry. Not the fake tears from the interview, but real ugly sobs of realization. Please, she whispered, I'll drop the lawsuit. Just don't release that. Oh, we're not just going to release it, Graves said, leaning forward. We are countersuing. Jessica looked up, eyes wide. What? Meridian Airways is countersuing you for breach of contract and reputational damage. And Mr. Reynolds is countersuing you personally for the legal fees incurred by his family. Graves slid a document across the table. This is a settlement offer. You will drop your lawsuit. You will issue a public written apology to Diana Reynolds, approved by us. You will admit to your bias, and you will pay Meridian Airways a symbolic restitution of $50,000 to cover the delay costs of Flight 880. $50,000, Jessica shrieked. I don't have that, huh? I don't have a job. I'm getting evicted. Then I suggest you sell your car, Graves said coldly, or perhaps ask your mother for a loan. But if you don't sign this today, we go to trial, and when we win, the judgment will be in the millions. You will be garnished for the rest of your life. Jessica looked at Samuel Hines. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Sign it, Jessica, he muttered. I can't win this. With a shaking hand, Jessica Miller picked up the pen. She signed away her pride. She signed away her future. She signed the admission that she was exactly what the world said she was. As she left the glass office, stepping out onto the busy Manhattan street, she looked up at the sky. A plane was soaring overhead, climbing through the clouds toward London. She would never be on it. She would never be on any of them. She was grounded permanently by the weight of her own prejudice. It had been exactly 1 year since the incident on Flight 880. The world had moved on. The internet outrage had faded, replaced by the next scandal, the next viral villain. But for Jessica Miller, the consequences were etched into every single day of her new life. She wasn't flying to London or Paris anymore. She wasn't sipping champagne in the galley or looking down her nose at passengers in 1A. Jessica was standing under the harsh fluorescent lights of a discount clothing warehouse in New Jersey, tagging clearance items. Her feet, once used to heels, now ached in sensible generic sneakers. She had been forced to sell her car to pay the first installment of the settlement to Meridian Airways. She took the bus to work. The Airport Karen nickname had stuck just enough to make her unhireable in any customer-facing role in the city. No hotel would take her. No restaurant wanted the liability. This warehouse job where she sorted boxes in the back was the only place that didn't care about her Google search results. It was lunch break. Jessica sat in the cramped break room, eating a sandwich she had made at home. On the wall, a small, dusty television was playing the midday news. And finally today, the news anchor announced a heart-warming story from the aviation world. Jessica looked up, her heart skipping a beat. The screen cut to a live feed from JFK Airport. There, standing in front of a shiny new Meridian Airways jet, was Diana Reynolds. She looked older, more confident. She wasn't wearing a hoodie today. She was wearing a sharp blazer, though she still rocked her Converse sneakers. Next to her stood her father, David, beaming with pride. Today marks the launch of the Reynolds Meridian Scholarship for Diversity in Aviation, the reporter said. This $5 million fund will help young people from underrepresented backgrounds attend flight school. Diana stepped up to the microphone. She smiled, and it was a smile of genuine warmth, the kind Jessica had never been able to fake. A year ago, Diana said to the cameras, "I was told I didn't look like I belonged on a plane. I was told I didn't fit the profile. So I decided to change the profile. This scholarship is for every kid in a hoodie who dreams of being a pilot, an engineer, or a CEO. You belong here." The break room was silent. Jessica stared at the screen. She saw the flashbulbs popping. She saw the adoring crowd. She saw the logo of the airline she had given 10 years of her life to, now backing the girl she had tried to kick off. A co-worker, a young guy named Mike, crunched into an apple next to her. "Hey, isn't that the girl from that video last year? The one where the flight attendant got owned?" Jessica stiffened. She looked down at her sandwich. "Yeah," she whispered. "That's her." "Man." Mike laughed, shaking his head. "I wonder what happened to that flight attendant. Probably living under a rock somewhere." Jessica didn't say a word. She stood up, crumpled her wrapper, and threw it in the trash. The segment ended, and the weather report started. She walked back out to the warehouse floor to fold cheap grey hoodies for minimum wage grounded forever, while Diana Reynolds took to the sky. Jessica Miller thought she was the gatekeeper of the elite. She thought a badge and a uniform gave her the right to judge a book by its cover, but she learned the hard way that when you judge people based on appearances, you aren't showing their worth. You're showing your own lack of it. In the end, it cost her everything. Her career, her reputation, and her financial future. Meanwhile, Diana Reynolds used that same moment of hatred to build a legacy of inclusion. It's a brutal, beautiful reminder. Be kind to everyone you meet. You never know who they are or who they might become. But more importantly, it costs absolutely nothing to treat people with respect, but it can cost you everything if you don't. And that is the story of how one flight attendant's prejudice led to the ultimate instant karma. What do you guys think? Did Jessica deserve a second chance, or was the punishment exactly what she needed? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more real-life dramas about justice being served, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.